Liam Lawson is in the worst position out of all the drivers on the F1 grid. Through everything that's happened in this past season, he went from being one of the most promising young drivers in the best position in the sport to now being at a point where it looks like there's nowhere to go and his F1 tenure is coming to a close. By the looks of it, it's looking like he will have a seat in F1 next year, but is it just delaying the inevitable? The truth is, Liam Lawson hasn't really done anything wrong. He's been loyal to Red Bull and their academy for years when he joined in 2019, and they honestly owed him more. His entire career from F3 onwards was completely governed by Helmut Marko and Red Bull, with the decisions. Staying in F3 for 2 years, making the moves to F2, and even the swap to Japanese Super Formula were all made by Red Bull. But it was seen as okay because it was what gave Liam Lawson the best chance at F1. And it did end up paying off in those regards because he did get that chance. But it wasn't exactly easy. Throughout his younger career, Liam Lawson did get test drives in the Red Bull and AlphaTauri F1 cars from 2021 to 2023, and he did have reserve driver roles for both teams, but AlphaTauri still had multiple options that they prioritized before Lawson. Keep in mind this was 2023, while Lawson was set to drive in Super Formula, which would be the step in between F2 and F1, and the second AlphaTauri seat was open because Pierre Gasly was departing for Alpine, and Lawson was seemingly the fourth choice. The first choice was Colton Herta, as Helmut Marko made it very clear that he would have been the choice if he did have the super license points, but when that fell through, they opted for Nyck De Vries, based solely off the reserve performance that he had in Monza in 2022. The third choice was Daniel Ricciardo, who was the reserve driver for the senior team at the time after being dropped from McLaren, and it was made very apparent he was above Lawson in priority when he was the one who replaced De Vries halfway through the season. That meant the driver that they sent to Japan to compete and portray that they had full faith in was the fourth choice to them, behind an IndyCar driver who hadn't touched F1 machinery, behind a 27-year-old rookie, and behind a veteran nearing the end of his career at what was labeled as the junior team. I feel like that side of things is often overlooked because Lawson did end up getting a chance in the end, but it isn't like it wasn't a fortunate scenario that really led him there. He did show out in his performances in the second half of 2023, specifically a P9 in Singapore, but the opportunity only came from Daniel Ricciardo's injury at Zandvoort, and they just ran with it when Lawson started performing. Even after that, they didn't go with Lawson for the 2024 year, and on a statistics level, it does make some sense. Lawson had 6 races in 2023, and Ricciardo had 7, and Lawson had 2 points, and Ricciardo had 6, with both of them scoring all their points at 1 GP. But from the standpoint of Red Bull's future, it made a little less sense. Going with Ricciardo, who hadn't done extremely well for a while, versus a young, promising talent on the junior team, if you look past the nice guy personality of Daniel Ricciardo, you can see why it makes more sense to go with Lawson. They did come to realize that by giving Lawson the full-time seat for the first time in the last 6 races of the season, but once again, this does show the lack of true commitment that they had to Liam Lawson. But that narrative as a whole looked like it was going to take a shift for the 2025 season. With Red Bull not exactly feeling confident in Sergio Perez for their second driver spot, they didn't turn to Yuki Tsunoda, they didn't turn to Daniel Ricciardo, and they didn't turn to Carlos Sainz. They went with Liam Lawson. Now going into the season, this was kind of an insane play in my mind. Keep in mind this 2025 year is Liam Lawson's first full-time season in F1 and his first genuine F1 off-season where he knows he's actually driving that year. In general, that's an immense amount of pressure considering the circumstances, but that's perfectly fine given Lawson's track record. On a results level, Tsunoda was a good bit better than Lawson in 2024, but it's been known that the Red Bull family doesn't really believe in Tsunoda as much without the financial backing of Honda. But regardless, they saw that Lawson had a higher ceiling in terms of results than Tsunoda and wanted to try to capitalize off that. In general, that's a very valid argument to make, and I don't completely disagree with it. But the requirement with thinking that way is following through. If you see a driver that's proven less yet has more potential, you need to be patient. But after all, that isn't really what Red Bull's known for. We all do know how it went with Lawson being swapped for Tsunoda after only 2 race weekends, and it was definitely a decision to say the least. 2 race weekends is such a short amount of time to even consider Lawson's results, and his results weren't even that bad considering how Yuki Tsunoda has done in the same machinery, but obviously that's hindsight. In totality, it's just weirdly quick to demote a driver in that way that you've invested so much into in the past and saw so much talent in. Now, a large part of why many people will say that Lawson was dropped for Tsunoda has to do with the money side offered by Honda, but that can't be the entire picture. During the offseason, it was rumored to have that same monetary offer of 20 million euros to promote Tsunoda, but they declined that in favor of Lawson's promising future. So it's not like they completely changed their mind on that sort of thing after only 2 races. And even if that was the case, it's not like Red Bull's exactly strapped for cash. So ruining Liam Lawson's career for some extra cheddar just doesn't exactly sound right. The only other consideration that there could be was that Lawson was not necessarily demoted to Racing Bulls, but put there for more development. We saw the Red Bull car was definitely difficult to drive, and maybe it was more beneficial to put Lawson in an easier car to drive to develop it more. But I do find that really hard to believe, especially given the way the whole ordeal was handled by Red Bull. In reality, you really just got to feel for Liam Lawson here. He was promised a seat year after year and really struggled to get opportunities, but when he did, he capitalized. It's just unfortunate he wound up in the team that couldn't give him the time to truly prosper. And to be honest, it has left a stain on its reputation that'll probably most likely prevent his career from carrying on. In the immediate future, things don't look too bad, but when we start to look beyond that, it starts to get a little bit more dicey. Next year, Lawson actually might keep his seat at Racing Bulls because the most likely scenario is that Isack Hadjar will be moving to the Red Bull senior team, Arvid Lindblad moving to Racing Bulls, and a heads up between Tsunoda and Lawson for the second Racing Bulls seat. The reason I think Red Bull is more likely to retain Lawson is because without Honda funding, they don't really have the same need for Tsunoda, and even without it, he's kind of run his course in the Red Bull ecosystem for long enough that they've kind of evaluated his talent. Although this seems like a good thing for Lawson, like I hinted at earlier though, I feel like this is simply delaying the inevitable. The truth is, no driver that's been demoted from the Red Bull senior team back to the junior team has returned. Not one. Now the main argument for that will be that none of them really proved themselves again. And while that may be true for most of the drivers, that isn't the case for one, Pierre Gasly. After being dropped from Red Bull, Gasly managed to win a race in 2020 and had one of the most generational seasons in 2021, and still, there was just no acknowledgement from the Red Bull team. To be completely honest, Liam Lawson is doing good, but not quite to the standard of what Gasly was able to accomplish in the past. But the overall scenario is much different, so who knows, it could play out differently. The main point to take away though is that once you're out of that Red Bull team, there really isn't an entrance back in. And I'm not saying that it's completely impossible that Lawson gets another chance there, but the odds are definitely against him when it comes to making that return at Red Bull. Now, also, at the end of the day, succeeding with Red Bull isn't the only option, but the chaos that's happened there is sure to leave a stain on Lawson's reputation, and it is sure to be a push factor for those other teams to sign him. Many teams could look to sign a talent like Lawson, but there's now that obstacle that does stand in the way. Not that it's the exact same thing, but when looking at the second Sauber seat this year, Gabriel Bortoleto was chosen over Mick Schumacher, and when asked, Mattia Binotto said, "Why Kimi Antonelli and not Mick at Mercedes in 2025?" when referring to why he didn't choose Mick Schumacher. Now, there are definitely other reasons why Audi probably didn't want Mick Schumacher for the future, but the big takeaway from this scenario is that teams will factor in that other teams have not wanted a driver in the past. The question starts to creep in, why did they not want him? And it tends to be an unknown that many teams don't want to figure out on their own. Teams are not going to go with the risky option like Lawson because they have the option to go with the proven veteran that'll be much more experienced and much more reliable. And if they want that risk, they'll go with a raw talent that's just an F2 or their driver academies. Sauber actually set a perfect example of this with the 2 drivers they ended up choosing this year with Nico Hülkenberg and Gabriel Bortoleto, and it shows that they would go with an experienced driver and a rookie rather than going for a risky prospect, just like we looked at with Mick Schumacher. This puts Liam Lawson in a bit of a weird middle ground, and it makes him really difficult as a prospect to warrant any team going out and snagging him up from RB. In general, Liam Lawson has quite the unfortunate time ahead of him. Unless he does go ahead and make a splash very soon, his time in F1 may be drawing to a close all too soon, and the sad part of that is, it wasn't really his fault.